name is Mike Billingsley, and I am the Chamber of Commerce Legislative Committee Chairman, and I'll be the moderator for this event. I'd like to thank our sponsors who are listed on the sheet behind me, who have sponsored the government relation programs for the year, and they are AEP Appalachian Power, Atmos Energy, Charter Communications, Domtar, Eastman Chemical Company, Holston Valley Medical Center, Indian Path Medical Center, and King Pharmaceuticals. And I'd like to say thank you to those sponsors for providing this event and all the events that have occurred through the year. I'm going to be reading some questions here, and the candidates will be responding to those questions, and they'll each receive an opening and closing statement. So let me just run through this with everyone, please. Our purpose in this is to provide a forum for our candidates to express their views and philosophies pertaining to business matters in the state. This forum is designed so that the candidates respond to questions we have provided them in advance and not to engage in dialogue between themselves. Each candidate will have an opening and closing statement limited to 4 minutes each. Each question asked will have a specific time limit set, and the order of response will be determined by a coin toss, which has already taken place. Questions will alternate so that the candidate who goes first in the opening statement will have the final closing statement. And with that, we'll begin with Mr. Shipley, who will make an opening statement.
Good. Can everybody hear me? Is that loud enough? Very good. Well, thank you for having us today. It's always a distinct honor to stand before your fellow citizens and vet your positions on issues, and we certainly have difference of opinion on many issues, and that's what we're here for today, and I thank you for being here. You know, I was asked a couple of years ago to run for this office, and I agreed for several reasons. My positions on the issue, I submit, are more in line with your way of thinking than those of my opponent. My positions have been clearly laid out and specific actions identified. My opponent has done neither. I believe that the role of the state representative should be defined more broadly as a year-round community advocate who identifies real solutions to real problems in our community, in concert with citizen advisory committees, business, nonprofit organizations, and the Chamber of Commerce. Real solutions for real problems for real people are best discovered amongst the people. I believe firmly that government works best when it's closest to those whom it governs. I believe the role of the state representative is an advocator, a facilitator, and lastly, a legislator of real solution to these problems. Over the years, I have been an advocate for citizens in Sullivan County facilitating roads and infrastructure repair, youth and mentoring programs, youth and athletic programs, domestic violence support programs, and pro-life solutions that protect the unborn children of America. I have built successful partnerships with elected officials and business leaders to accomplish this. It's why I'm running for office. During this election, I have surveyed the 2nd District and have discovered several important and critical issues: illegal immigration, the economy and education, health care. But no issue has more clearly defined this campaign than the issue of State Route 126, and no other issue has more clearly defined us as men than 126. My opponent has busy trying to change the subject away from his failed record on 126 and trying to change it to who started the process, while I'm interested in who's going to finish the process. I have secured agreements with area legislators to make 126 a legislative priority, while my opponent has the governor on the radio telling him what a good job he's done on Memorial Boulevard. My opponent is long on talk, but short on action. My opponent tells you one thing in Kingsport and goes to Nashville and does something else. My opponent will tell you I have attacked his values in an effort to once again change the subject away from a failed record as a legislator, and specifically his failures to advocate for the business community in Kingsport. I have never attacked his personal values, but his votes in the legislature are fair game and they are subject to public discussion. This is the point at which my campaign is focused. My opponent's anti-business and non-representative voting record. My opponent scoffs at my experience, which is an affront to every Tennessean who's ever wore the uniform of this nation. He also doesn't quite understand that I've been a businessman too. I've made a payroll. He also doesn't seem to understand that I've been a civic leader and I have led civic groups to do good things in this community too. On the other hand, my opponent doesn't really want to talk about his legislative experience. He wants to change the subject again to vague statements and lots of talk. My opponent's experience includes supporting pro-labor union activities in this city, voting for convicted felons to keep their health insurance, votes against English as the language for driver's license testing, votes against requiring photo identification to vote and register to vote, running misleading ads in the Times News that suggests he was endorsed by Tennessee Right to Life, and he knows that's not true because of his votes in support for pro-choice Jimmy Nafee, Speaker of the House. Also, his votes killing business legislation, positive legislation to promote business, and his failed leadership on 126. These items reflect my opponent's experience. I say no thank you to that experience. I don't want that kind of experience, and the citizens of the 2nd District have told me that they don't want it either.
Mr. Vaughn?
Thanks to everyone for being here. Boy, that was pretty tough. Does that reflect who I am? I don't think so. Thanks for allowing me today to give you some perspectives of what I see as being important in this campaign. Many of you know who I've worked with. No, I have worked very hard to earn the trust and serve the people of the 2nd District. I am extremely proud of my record and look forward to placing that record before the people time and time again, as I have in the past. Now, my opponent and his operatives, they have been very critical of me, as you just heard. I think this is extremely unfortunate, and I really don't believe there's any place for this kind of just mean-spirited, partisan attack of what you have just heard. This is the kind of thing that is really hurting our communities, our state, and ultimately our nation. We are dividing our people in ways that is keeping this nation from being everything that it can be. Now, my opponent, he has gone through my record, and he says that I'm critical of his record. I don't even know what his record is, because I've heard lots of stuff, rhetoric, but I've not really seen him in action in any plan, in any government elected office. I don't know of any real positions he has taken on any of those issues in the community. Now, here's what he has done to me. He sent out a series of mailers to attack my values and my commitment to constituents. And this is not just a claim. Many of you, if not all of you, have received those. It says my values are not consistent with the values of Tennessee. That's what it says. He used 3 newspapers that he published to attack me and spread just propaganda about an agenda that in many instances was not only false, some of it was even unconstitutional. He used an unprecedented 7 daily front page Times News articles about his agenda, much of it having nothing to do with the issues for each of these articles as they related to the priorities of the people of this state. Drilling in Anwar. What does Tennessee have to do with drilling in Anwar? Nothing. Nothing. I have no position as to whether or not drilling is going to be. If they want to drill in Anwar, drill. That's as far as, but to say that I'm somewhat in opposition, that was insane to even put on the front page of the paper. Differences on judges. If the people of Tennessee want to elect judges, I'm fine with that. The lieutenant governor came to our Kiwanis Club and told us that his position on judges had to do with the fact that he was not allowed to select the individuals he wanted to, and he felt as though this was the problem. He didn't say anything about electing judges. Why isn't he critical of the lieutenant governor? English only driver's license testing. I voted House Bill 424. I voted for testing driver's licenses in English only, raiding the highway fund. My opponents, colleagues, they all voted for the same bill that he uses as his rationale for this. So I look forward to this discussion and look forward to talking about the issues that are important to you as we move forward.
The questions that we'll be addressing today are not in any order of priority, and they each have a time limit. And the time limit varies, and I will give the time limit as we move forward. Mr. Vaughn will respond to the first question first. Here's the question. There are a number of issues pertaining to energy conservation, alternative energy, and such currently being discussed in the national dialogue. What steps, if any, would you support in the legislature for energy conservation measures, mandated or otherwise, in the state of Tennessee? This is a 3-minute time limit. Mr. Vaughn.
Thank you. And one thing, I really don't like the word mandates in terms of Tennessee's government as it relates to its constituencies and the people. I think we need to sit down and try and come up with an agenda that makes sense for all of us. Those alternatives, I think we need to support, fall into the whole gamut of the energy alternatives that are out there: wind, nuclear, solar and geothermal, biofuels, hydroelectric, battery power. We must leave no stone unturned, since it will take a combination of all of these alternatives in order for us to resolve the issues necessary for us to solve this energy issue. Our country has 3% of the world's oil reserves, yet we use 25% of the world's supply. This is not acceptable. We must develop electric cars, fuel cells, and any kind of alternatives that we can come up with in order to drive our energy initiatives. The other thing we must do, we must conserve. This is the ultimate opportunity that we have, is conservation. We must just use less energy. We must encourage the development of these alternatives through tax credits. We must encourage folks that go out and attempt to build a better mousetrap through the use of these alternatives. We must encourage them through incentives such as tax credits. We must develop partnerships with different businesses, such as the partnership we have between the state of Tennessee, the University of Tennessee, and Oak Ridge National Laboratories as it relates to our biofuels initiatives. We have to be creative as we go about solving the issues that affect us in this energy crisis that we have. There is no alternative. This is a national security issue. This is not something that we have the luxury of it maybe one day addressing. We must resolve this issue if we are to maintain our standing as the last superpower in this world. And so I am committed for the state of Tennessee doing everything in its power to address this issue of energy alternatives as we move forward, and I think we've done some things to show our commitment to this effort already. Thank you.
Mr. Shipley.
Good. First thing I think we need to do is put out the welcome mat in Tennessee for green, renewable, alternative energies. We really need to look at ways to attract not just the business, but attract people who want to come here and work in that industry. Every fiscally responsible means that we can think of ought to be employed to attract these industries. I think it is really important that we admittedly leave no stone unturned when it comes to what we need to do to set America on a path of energy independence. And I think Tennessee is really in a good position to make those things happen. Secondly, mandates don't work. Mandates are the wrong thing for business. I believe in advocating conservation. I do believe in that. I believe in facilitating conservation in business and providing incentives, but mandates is the wrong direction for us to go. Finally, we need to see what the governor's energy task force, the one that Miles is sitting on, we need to see what they have to say. But the thing I'm most excited about is Tennessee's national leadership in the biofuels industry and research, the possibility of using switchgrass and algae as a means to produce biodiesel. That's really exciting and has some great potential. But in addition to that, we've really got to take a serious look at nuclear energy. And more importantly, and special here in Kingsport, is clean coal technology. Eastman is very close to a process in coal gasification that's very similar to something that was used in Germany in the 30s of changing coal to liquid fuels. That's something that's very important, and we need to really consider that closely. Tennessee sits right in the middle of a great opportunity when it comes to coal. And if we could really exploit the coal resources of the United States and develop liquid fuels, we'd really be on to something. Thank you.
A few years ago, some changes were made to Tennessee workers' compensation law intended to reduce the cost of the program to business. Since then, any number of changes to the law have been proposed. What is your position on changes to the workers' compensation law? This is 3 minutes time limit. Mr. Shipley.
Recent changes in the workers' comp law have yielded lower premiums, and I think that's a good first step. The workers' comp, the concept of it is good and it's a good and reasonable tool. It protects both the employee and the employer. However, its application in many times has been viewed by many as a means to financial success. And I think that we really have got to guard against it being used as a smorgasbord of financial opportunities. In Tennessee, when possible, we should use the arbitration process and avoid the expensive process of going to trial. We need to enforce very strict criminal sanctions against those who would commit workers' comp fraud. We should have erect barriers to frivolous lawsuits and define limitations and restrictions on subjective injury versus objective injury. If there's no proof of the injury, if just somebody says my arm hurts and there's no proof, there's an issue there that I think doctors can answer best, and we need to look at that when it comes to a compensatable objective injury. There are many people more knowledgeable than me on this, I have to admit. But I will say that my position on this is one of the reasons that NFIB endorsed this campaign, and I would look forward in the next General Assembly to come together with the NFIB and the Chamber and come up with some really good working solutions to make this an even better situation for business.
Mr. Vaughn.
Thank you. And again, this for me is not an issue as to, well, I don't know very much about. One of the things I do, I write workers' comp in my business. I understand these issues as a small businessman. I directly was involved in the changes that took place as it relates to these workers' comp laws. Now, one of the things my opponent wants to define me as is somehow I'm against you. I'm against business. How can I be against myself? I am a businessman. Let me explain it to you this way. Sometimes people want to define me as being this big pro-union, pro-labor person. This was not a pro-union bill that we passed in terms of the workers' comp reform bill. And I voted to change those laws, to reduce those costs to business, because it was the right thing for Tennessee. And when it's right and good for Tennessee, I'm going to be there. Those are the things that I support. I was directly involved in the negotiations. I was directly involved with individuals that made the decisions as to what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And we made some tough choices. And nobody was happy with everything we did. But I think ultimately the people of this state were well served by the changes we made in the workers' comp laws, because we reduced costs to businesses that are already here, and we encouraged those businesses that weren't here to come here. And that's how we were able to get businesses like Volkswagen to come here, because Tennessee is a good climate for business. And I can tell you, people like me are fighting every day for you in business to make this a better place for all of us. Now, what do we need to do as we move forward? We need to be very cautious. This is not the kind of thing that you just jerk side by side and you make radical changes year to year. What we've got to do is make sure the decisions that we are making make sense for the long-term welfare of our workers' comp laws in this state. And that's what we are doing. We are being very proactive as we move forward, and I will continue to provide leadership for the business community on issues such as this. Thank you.
The next question is, in reference to health care, how do you feel about the state mandating coverage of certain procedures, treatments, or programs? And how do you feel about the state mandating employer-provided health care coverage if it is provided for employees after an employee leaves or retires from that employment? This is a question with a 3-minute time limit. And Mr. Vaughn.
Again, as I said earlier, I'm a no mandate man. I just don't believe that's the way government interacts with its constituents. When we have to shove stuff down your throat, that means it probably isn't very good for you. It's not like taking medicine. You know, we used to do that a long time ago when we were kids. Mom used to shove it down our throat. That's not the way we interact with business. Healthcare is not, nor should it be, mandated by the state on the backs of business. Business is having a tough time. They are really, in many instances, struggling to carry an economy on its back. And if in the event we continue to put more and more weight on that camel, it's going to fall. And so I am not in agreement with any kind of mandates. Do we need to provide affordable options for people? Do we need to be careful that we not allow any entity to come up with health plans that make no sense? It would almost be better to have a plan that basically is such as our Cover Tennessee program, maybe has less coverage, but it addresses the major issues that people face as they go about their health care needs. We should be encouraged to form these partnerships between government and business as to how we can come up with plans and solutions that make sense for all of us as to how we cover the people of this state, because it is critical that our citizens have health care. But you look at companies like General Motors, who every car that they sold had a cost of $1,500 for its health care programs. And look at the shape that it's in right now. So putting those kind of programs on the backs of our business, I don't think is a very good approach. Mandates for treatment and all of these kind of things, I think have to be very well thought out and considered before any of these kind of initiatives are placed on the backs of business. We need to encourage business to prosper and do well and not saddle them with the mandates that cause, in many instances, them to be uncompetitive in this world economy. Thank you.
Mr. Shipley.
Good. This is a really important thing for us to consider as business people. When Susan and I ran our company, had about 48 employees, one of the things that we wanted to provide was health insurance. There was a horrifically expensive price tag attached to providing that for our employees. The benefits consume a lot of money, and I think we all know that as business leaders. But when we could finally do that and provide health insurance, we were excited. You know, we never thought about not providing health insurance. But had there been a government mandate out there mandating that I had to do that, I would have never been in business. I would have never been able to employ those people. It just wouldn't have happened because I couldn't have gotten from here to there. So I think it is very important, and I think it's the ultimate solution, is private sector involvement in business, and not government, but private sector involvement in the provision of health care. I think that's really, really important. Another piece of that is the minimum wage issue. That's a wrong-headed approach to government. It's a backdoor mandate. I don't think that's a good idea. I never employed minimum wage people as my mainline employees. But had I had a prohibitively high minimum wage, I could not have helped the college students that were looking for some entry-level opportunities to come over and just be cleaners, to clean things up. I was glad to do that. So I think we do have to be careful when we're tweaking the system when it comes to government. We don't want to mandate. I think we do need to look at allowing associations to cluster together and provide opportunities for their workers. So this is a vitally important issue, and we cannot take it lightly. As a legislature, we need to be very, very cautious about the things that we do when it comes to mandating anything to business. And this is not a place to mandate, this is for sure.
The next question. Cover Tennessee was developed by the state to create affordable and portable health insurance options to meet the needs of the uninsured in our state. Governor Bredesen said on the Cover Tennessee website that it's a reasonable first step. Generally, it is open to employees of businesses located and operating in Tennessee with 50 or less full-time employees earning less than $43,000 per year. The business must offer its plan to all employees and pay at least 1/3 of the premiums. There are some other requirements, but this listing covers the basic requirements related to business. Would you support or oppose changing the eligibility requirements for business for Cover Tennessee? And please explain. This is a 2-minute time limit.
Yeah.
And Mr. Shipley.
I just stated, and I'll repeat it, I really do not believe that the ultimate solution in health care in America resides with government. I think that resides with the individual and with the private sector. We do need to be concerned about providing minimal basic health care for those individuals just entering the workforce or who are unable to get insurance. That would be a correct thing to do. But the real solution is privately funded health insurance, which is portable and expandable. But the solution here is not health care. The solution here is a robust economy and a stable work environment that grows new jobs with great pay and benefits for our employees. And this is done by providing a positive, pro-growth environment for business. That's the ultimate solution in America for health care, not government.
Mr. Vaughn.
This is I guess, a fundamental difference that we have. Again, I believe that government has a role in helping business to meet some of their goals and objectives to help their employees. Many employers want to provide health care to their employees, they just can't afford to do it. And if government can assist them in being able to do that, such as the Cover Tennessee program, where government pays 1/3 of that cost, that then becomes a real incentive for business to try and step up to the plate and voluntarily do something that benefits both them as an employer and their employees. But without the assistance of government, sometimes this isn't possible. And so when people say there's not a role, I think government has a role as a catalyst to help business achieve the very things that are important. Now, should we make some changes? Yes. Just last year, we changed from 25 employees to 50 employees. We also made some changes in the area of allowing those individuals who, through no fault of their own, lose their health insurance to basically be able to come on the Cover Tennessee program. And so we're doing some things. We don't want to grow this program too big, too fast, but we want to make sure that this is something that we are doing to assist employers achieve voluntarily the objectives and goals that they have within their companies to assist their employees. Thank you.
Next question. Considering the limited resources expected this year in state revenues, what proposals, if any, would you support to attempt to improve or increase availability of education in Tennessee, which could include proposals concerning pre-K through 12th grade, vocational or higher education? This is a 4-minute time limit. Mr. Vaughn.
Thank you. And this is a real opportunity and challenge for us. Next year will be a very potentially difficult year for Tennessee in terms of its revenues. Programs such as education will require huge appropriations, and we will see some real changes as to how we addressed funding of education. Education, though, is so important fundamentally that it is, if not the top priority, it is one of the top priorities that we will face in our state. And so we must really be willing to step up to the plate to meet these challenges. Our K through 12 commitment, in my mind, from an educational standpoint, is number one. And the first reason it's number one is because our state constitution says that K through 12 education is a responsibility of the state of Tennessee. So we have a fundamental constitutional commitment through K through 12 education, and we have to make it work. We have to fund it adequately. We have to be equitable as to how we allocate those resources, and we must do everything we can to make sure every child in our state has access to a quality educational program. But in all reality, we are going to see probably some cuts. We are probably going to see some cuts in the pre-K programs. We probably are not going to expand those programs as we have in the past. I think funding will really be challenged in order to do that, particularly in light of some of the studies that have come out that have shown limited real differences in performance for children who, in many instances, may not be as needy as other kids And so we are probably going to see some changes there. Higher education is also going to see some significant cutbacks. And I think they already understand that. And they're already getting prepared to address many of those things. I think I know you folks have been reading the paper and have seen what ETSU will be experiencing and some of the cutbacks that they are already preparing for on the board in order to meet the challenges that they face. That's why it's so important that we do the things in making sure that Tennessee's economy is strong, that we're doing the things to support those initiatives to give our young people the opportunities necessary to move themselves forward. I look at my oldest son, a graduate of the Kingsport City School System, a graduate of the University of Tennessee system, and I see what Tennessee has done for him. And I then see my commitment in state government that we've got to do everything we can to make sure that children educated in Tennessee get a quality experience such that they are capable of meeting the challenges in our business community for leading our economy to where we'd like for it to go. Thank you.
Mr. Shipley.
How do you balance your checkbook? And I ask you that in all fairness. And these are tough times. Kingsport seems to be doing better than most, but these are tough times. If you have a tough time, you spend less. Times are good, you expand carefully and well considered, and you do good things when you have the money to do it. There is no denying that education is a top priority in the state of Tennessee. Absolutely none. Putting education first in the budget, though, would give it that priority that we could actually take a look at it and make sure that we're doing the things we need to do. And by putting it first in the budget process, it pushes out the bottom those programs that perhaps need to have a second look to see if they are really what we need to be doing during economic times. I believe that we may be able to hold steady on pre-K. I also believe that our emphasis needs to be on kindergarten through 12. There's no doubt about it. But I've actually proposed a program that's got revenue out there that we've not been using that I would like for you to consider. And I call it the Targeted Education and Economic Development Plan. That uses a portion of the surplus lottery funds to target specific economic needs in the community. Case in point, the mayor and the board mayor and alderman have created a wonderful, wonderful education opportunity downtown. It's only going to get bigger and better. And they are looking at career fields that are very specifically targeted to this business environment. What a great thing. Young people can go into a career field that's being featured here in this community, walk out the door one day with a diploma and into Domtar or Eastman the next. Chemical processors, electricians, welders. These are skill sets that are vital to our economy and jobs that pay well. They do good. We can also use that in other career fields, such as the RN career field, a place where we have a perennial shortage. It goes on and on and on. I had lunch the other day with a member of the healthcare community, and they mentioned to me the expense of traveling nurses, and that the surplus of RNs in this market would certainly drive down their costs. Ergo, drive down the cost of medical care, drive down the cost of insurance, so on and so on. Education is a centerpiece of our economy. It's a centerpiece of our culture. It's a family issue, and it's something that we cannot ignore, and it certainly is a priority in the state of Tennessee, and I think it needs to be one that stays on top of the box when we start looking at what we need to do to balance our budget.
The next question, it appears the revenue from the state government may not meet projections and the shortfall could be significant. If the state economic outlook does not improve, do you support or oppose cuts in state government, an increase in taxes to make up the shortfall, some combination of some of those or other alternatives? If you would support cutting state government, would you prefer across-the-board cuts or targeted cuts? And if you favor targeted cuts, what would be your top 3 priorities to preserve? This is a 3-minute question. We'll start with Mr. Shipley.
Yeah. I'll probably be called mean-spirited for this, but my opponent is a proven tax raiser. And I do not think this is a time to raise taxes, and frankly, I don't support raising taxes. I would favor targeted reductions as a responsible means to endure hard economic times if we need to. But before we do that, I think we need to look at the budget and see if there's some place where we can cut things out that just aren't what we need, or are there places where we can save money, such as the provision of health care for illegal immigrants, the provision of educational services in the state of Tennessee for illegal immigrants, and even in the incarcerated and law enforcement. The expense is mounting every year in Tennessee. We need to do things to protect Tennessee from that cost so that we have the money to do the things that we want to do for Tennesseans. Now, my top priorities to preserve are education, economic development, which provides that health care component, and transportation, which provides for the safety and economic component.
Mr. Vaughn.
Thank you. And again, my opponent he can't help himself in terms of being critical of me. It's more important to criticize me than tell people what he believes. But targeted budget cuts that we've got to look at, this is going to be a tough year. There's no question about it. 2 years into the budget year, we're already $142 million down. We basically are going to see a tough year next year as to how we are going to address our budget. One of the things I can assure you, we're not going to have any major increases in taxes next year. We're not going to do it. We are going to live within the resources that you give us. I think you've heard that message from the governor. I think you've heard that message from many of your legislators who represent you in Nashville, because we have heard it from the people of this state. You have told us you want us to live within our means and not come back to you for any more money. Now, we've heard that message. And listen, loud and clear, I am not a tax and spender. I have been in Nashville 6 years, and the only tax I have passed was a tax on cigarettes. And if I had my choice, people wouldn't smoke at all. But I do believe that if people smoke, then they ought to pay a premium, because they are responsible for a large part of our rapidly increasing health care costs. What do we need to do in terms of whether or not these cuts are going to be targeted or whether or not they're going to be across the board? We're going to have to do a combination of both, folks. And we've already started that process. The governor, he's already canceled non-essential travel. We are already preparing for a reduction in each department's budget. We're looking at employee layoffs. When we go back to Nashville in January, that is already a part of the agenda that is out there. What are my top 3 priorities? My top 3 priorities are education, health care for children, and programs for the disabled. See, my opponent and I have a fundamental difference. I believe government has a basic responsibility to people who can't take care of themselves. It's important that our government reflect the priorities of children and the priorities of those who are needy and can't take care of themselves as compared to the rest of us. Rest of us have to take care of ourselves in the best way we can in terms of showing personal responsibility. Thank you.
The next question is, what is your view about increased state mandates on business? And do you differentiate between small businesses and large businesses? This is a 2-minute time limit. And Mr. Vaughn.
Again, I want to be clear. Mandates Bad, bad. We don't want to pass mandates on to business. Mandates, in my mind, are an indication that alternatives have failed in an effort to support the greater good that government must require for its citizens. We have got to be able to find ways to come up with solutions. That's why I like the idea of helping employers with their health insurance need for their employees. I think we need to be encouraging employers. We need to be assisting them where they tell us we can help them. We need to stay away from the mandates. We need to make sure that government is the friend of business, that we can sit down to the table and help you achieve your goals. The governor has a governor's cabinet that's made up of individuals within his cabinet that address the issues associated with business. And he sits down with those members of that cabinet to address the needs of business, not to tell them what to do, but to give them the opportunity to see where government can assist business. And that's what we need to be about doing. We need to be about working together to solve the solutions for the people of this state. Because as we go, as business goes, so goes Tennessee. Thank you.
I don't think there's any question with anybody in this room mandates are not the right thing for business in the state of Tennessee. We need to look at all kinds of different ideas, but not mandates. It's just wrong to tell a business what they need to do to promote their business in the state of Tennessee. I don't think there's really anything further that needs to be said about that.
Our next question, in your opinion, how do you differentiate your position and approach on business issues from your opponent? This is a 4-minute time limit. Mr. Shipley.
Well, contrary to my opponent, who does support big labor and the ultimate demise of what I would suspect would be the right to work laws, I do support right to work in the state of Tennessee. I don't try to stand on both sides of this issue at the same time. You've got to be one way or the other. Now, having said that, I clearly support working families, but I do it with the provision of a strong business environment, a 21st century education, and great health insurance that comes associated with business. I just think that you have got to look long and hard before you start looking at labor unions in Tennessee. It's just wrong-headed. I do not believe in government mandates on business. I simply do not believe it. The more you mess with government, the more you add weight on government, the more business leaves the state and, in fact, leaves our country. I don't believe in supporting a minimum wage that's above the federal government. I just don't believe that. I think that's wrong-headed. It's a foolish notion that does further harm to those people at the bottom of the economic scale in America. People struggling for opportunity to get a job, to do something, to learn a skill, even if it's working a cash register to say hello, how to work a time clock. I think we do great harm when we mess with that set of numbers. I don't think it's in the best interest of business. I don't think it's in the best interest of those people that need the jobs the most. I see the legislative pen as a mighty tool. I do see government as being proactive in solving problems for everybody. But I think we've got to be very careful when we start moving that ink pen around the paper. And we've got to look at things like tort reform, workers' comp reform, because there's still work to be done there. I believe in small government, restrained spending, low taxes, personal responsibility, and the fair application of our laws.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yeah, the first thing, many of you who've known my style in campaigns and government and how you talk about issues, I really hate to define my opponent as compared to me. I just think it sometimes can be a very negative process to basically say here's what he thinks and here's what I think. But let me just say, my opponent has no record. He has no record. I can't tell you what kind of decisions he would make as it relates to the tough questions that come before us. See, folks, when you're there making those decisions, there are no easy ones. Anybody can do that. And so it's so easy to just jump up with a lot of rhetoric and say, oh yeah, this is what you do, here's how it works, don't worry about this. Now my opponent keeps going back to this minimum wage issue as though paying people a decent wage is a bad thing. People who work for a living, they don't matter as it relates to what he's saying. One of the biggest elements of the immigration issue was the fact that we were paying people $5.25 an hour for 9 years with no increase, and we were encouraging people from foreign countries to come here to this country. The immigration problem is an economic issue, and that was what was driving. When we began to take away the incentives for people to come here for jobs, such as a bill I supported, sanctions to employers who voluntarily violate our laws in terms of hiring illegal immigrants, they started to go back home by themselves without any assistance from us. So when people talk out of both sides of their mouth, they don't want immigration, but they don't want to pay people either. Americans can't take jobs for $5.25 and be able to survive. And so we've got to be able to look at how we develop an economic climate such that we lift all boats. One of the things, though, is in terms of my style, is first you have to listen to the issues that are being put on the table. That's what I believe is so critical. Ask questions about the problems leading to these business concerns. Study the issues with all of the parties that are involved. Communicate the findings and ask for feedback, and then take action. And take action last, after you've done all of these things. Because the decisions that you make affect people's lives. And you want to try and get it right as best that you possibly can. But anybody who thinks that you can come up with this rhetoric, this ideology of here's what I stand for, big business and forget about people and all of these just kind of slogans and words that have very little meaning to people. People want to have a better life, all of us. That's what we want. We want to be able to have a good job. We want to be able to raise our children and educate them. We want to give them opportunity. Those are the things we want in this life. And when we say things and do things that basically say, I'm going to be in government, yet I'm not going to support labor. One of the things that I've always said, and folks, ever since I've been in elective office, I believe that a representative represents all of the people. That's labor, that's business, that's government, that's all of the people. And if we're doing those things, I think we'll make the right decisions. But if we choose one side as compared to the other, I think we will fail.
We now come to the closing statements, and each candidate will have 4 minutes to make a closing statement. The order of closing was determined by the flip of the coin, and Mr. Shipley went first, and so he'll go first in the closing. He went first in the opening, so he'll go first in the closing, then Mr. Vaughn. So Mr. Shipley?
Is that what we agreed to?
I think that's opposite.
I think it's opposite.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Mr. Vaughn will go first, and Mr. Shipley will go second.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's okay. Thank you.
Thanks again to everybody for coming. I think you've had an opportunity to see some differences in both our style and the substance of what we do in terms of being in government. One of the things that I first want to say, it's unfortunate that this campaign turned out to be as nasty as it's become in terms of the kind of personal attacks, in terms of my opponent trying to define who I am and what I believe and what I stand for. That's unfortunate because most of you know me. I've been around a long time, and someone who knows very little about me needs to be the individual to define me. My opponent talks about his business experience. That's fine. I've helped him. When he was having some struggles in his business, I came down to his office and worked with him to try to solve some problems. When he was having problems with the city of Kingsport, when he was having problems with the state of Tennessee, I was out there trying to reach out to people, reaching out even to him. But I don't mind the criticism. That's not what really has bothered me about this whole issue. But it's the hypocrisy. When you criticize people, that's okay. But then you look at the hypocrisy. Now, I fought for this Highway 126 project that my opponent talks about, that he's going to provide all of this leadership, and he's gotten with the team, and they somehow now are going to provide leadership on this. I invited all of the members of those quote team to be a part of this process. None of them responded back. My colleagues have represented this community, Lieutenant Governor Ramsey for 18 years, Representative Mumpower for 12 years, and they did absolutely nothing. If in the event Nathan Vaughn did not do enough on Highway 126, can anybody in here tell me why has there been no criticism of my other two colleagues who have represented this district for a lot longer than I have? That's the hypocrisy. And now they want to stand up and say they're going to move forward on this project when nobody in 2003, when I was providing the leadership on this project, and we've done a great job of being able to get things done on this highway that nobody else seemed to be able to do. And if you ask the people that were in position back then as to what was taking place on this highway, they'll tell you nobody was doing anything. And I moved forward, and now you look at center line rumble strips, you look at the fact that we've got guardrails, the fact that we've got restriping, we've got a brand new intersection out there at Carolina Pottery and 126. We've got a lot of good things done, and we're going to get a lot of good things to continue to happen. But it's unfortunate when government becomes so partisan that people want to see others fail rather than see the communities that they represent prosper and do good things. I am committed to doing the very best job I can for the people of this district and of this state to move Tennessee forward. Thank you.
Mr. Shipley.
Thanks for having us today. I do want to say that my opponent wants to call me mean and nasty. But I want to assure you, and I ask you to look at the facts. That started with him. It started with him, and it has persisted with him. We have illuminated the facts. We have laid them out painstakingly, and he has never, ever addressed the issues of the campaign. Never. His silence is deafening on issues of import to this community. He doesn't mind calling me a liar, which he has done. I've not called him that. His surrogates were in the paper this morning calling me a liar. Is that mean-spirited? I think it probably is. He doesn't mind defining me I've not defined him. I've challenged his record. He did come to my office when we had our ambulance company, but he came there so we could explain to him the difference between John Deere Tincare and John Deere. We were trying to get him to understand a problem that was going on in the ambulance industry. We never got him to understand. He didn't help me. He just caused more problems. I cannot go through volumes with you today, but here are the brochures he claims that were offensive to him. It says, Nathan Vaughn's a nice man, but his record does not reflect our values. That says nothing about him personally. It talks about his record. I still contend that his record does not. 126. Minority position he signed against the highway. 126. Declined to sign the final plan. Declined to sign. Folks, the gentleman is a talker. He is not a doer. He likes to call me the very thing that he is. He likes to accuse me of the very things that he and his surrogates do. You go to the paper and find any place in the paper that I've called him a liar. You won't find it. My campaign has been about facts, about his record. I intend to hold him accountable until Election Day. Let the voters make up their mind with the facts. The facts are on my website. We have gone to great length to put those up so that people can look at them. We have posted a plan for Highway 126. He's not done that. He talks about it. He wants to bring Lieutenant Governor Ramsey, Minority Leader Mumpower into the equation. This is a campaign between us. 2007, legislative breakfast, chamber. Was it on Mr. Vaughn's agenda? Highway 126? No. 2008, breakfast. Was it on his agenda? No. This year in the election, for the first time in 3 years, he has a meeting in the community to say, I'm concerned. He's a talker. I'm a doer. In closing, I remain resolute. I stand firm on my efforts to characterize my opponent, and my characterizations have been truthful and accurate. I encourage you, I ask you, I plead with you, go look at the website. Make up your mind by looking at the facts, not the rhetoric. I promise you one thing. When I go to Nashville, I will do exactly what I tell you I'm going to do. I'll not tell you one thing in Kingsport, go to Nashville and do something else. Thank you for having us.
On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, Kingsport Chamber of Commerce, let me say thank you to the candidates for the 2nd District, the Tennessee House of Representatives, to Mr. Vaughn, Nathan Vaughn, to Tony Shipley. We appreciate you being in attendance and participating in this forum. Let me also thank our sponsors for the government relations events. That includes AEP, Appalachian Power, Atmos Energy, Charter Communications, Domtar, Eastman Chemical, Holston Valley Medical Center, Indian Path Medical Center, and King Pharmaceuticals. I'd also like to thank Dragonfly Digital and Elixir Group for their video assistance with this forum. Good afternoon.